Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kim Jacobs Show. I am so excited to be coming on today to talk with you with Dr. Damon Silas. Hey, Dr. Silas.
Hey, Kim.
I'm so glad to have you on today. And I want to make sure you guys, as you come into the studio audience, you grab your seats, your virtual seats real fast. Get your pen and pads or your electronic devices so that you can officially take notes and everything. And yes, he's already. And we're going to go on a journey today talking about mental health awareness. So what I'd like for you to do is share today's broadcast with your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues. Your colleagues are your coworkers, your contemporaries, and any church members, friends, everybody in the community, to let them know that we're here on the air. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. And then I'm going to introduce my guests formally, okay? So I'm going to make sure that I see too. Did you send me that?
I did, and I can share it now.
You can see it?
Perfect, yeah.
All right, because I want to make sure that your friends get a chance to participate too.
Right.
All right, so now once that happens, you can get back off of that screen so we don't glitch.
All right. Good to go.
All right. All right, everyone, at this point, hopefully you guys have had a chance to share today's broadcast with your friends and your coworkers. And we're going to get started. I have a fancier pair of glasses today. I was like, I need to be able to see what's happening on these screens. And I made a commitment that I'm not going to be ignoring the fact that I can't see all of this stuff when I'm trying to read it.
I was listening to one of your last podcasts, and I heard you say, let me stop being in denial.
Yeah, let me just put these glasses on. They're only for reading purposes, so I still won't I won't claim it all the way. All right. Then we're going to get started here and enjoy our time together. Okay. So Dr. Damon Silas is a clinical psychologist, author, speaker, and personal development and professional growth coach with Collaborative Solutions Group. Dr. Silas specializes in trauma and PTSD. Dr. Silas is the author of the book entitled From Mourning to Night, Overcoming Loss. And he is also authored a follow-up book entitled What's Your Action Plan? 6 Powerful Ways to Get Unstuck in Your Life Now, which details ways to help those that feel stuck in their lives take their next steps forward. His third book is Free from Trauma, Escape the Past, Silence Your Subconscious Saboteur, and Overcome Your Past Traumatic Stress, is on its way soon. So keep in mind that his third book is coming down the pipeline. His podcast is entitled From Mourning to Action, Powerfully Working Through Loss. It's all about giving hope to people as they cope through their losses. And we're going to talk a lot about various types of losses today with Dr. Silas. He is also the co-host of WDRB radio show, which is also on iHeart Radio, entitled A Mental Health Mixtape. Fresh rhymes, sound bites, and movie clips, taking a fresh new perspective on an old age topic. He also teaches hip hop dance to kids and adults alike. He also enjoys constantly learning, growing, and evolving, and of course, having fun. So welcome, Dr. Damon Silas, to the Kim Jacobs Show.
Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate that. I'm so excited to be here. I'm grateful to be here as well.
Well, you're a man of many hats. I mean, you range from helping people with mental health issues to hip hop and dance. What made this whole combination come about in your life?
You know, do you want the short or the long answer?
Well, we have an entire hour. So you can talk from whatever perspective you like. Here's the thing, Dr. Silas, is it's important to know that on this show, too, I give people a chance to know the backstory of the person that's coming on. So as much of your growing up or anything that you want to share to give people a chance to connect with where you are today and why you are where you are today, feel free to share that. And then we're going to deep dive into some mental health awareness, into your book, and to quite a few different topics.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So yeah, first and foremost, I've been dancing all my life, like from the time that I was a little kid. I was always the person who, when my parents were having parties and playing their music, I would be out there doing my thing, doing the bump and the rock and the and emulating Michael Jackson and
not the bump and the rock though. I mean, you went back to whoa,
I brought it back. I told you I've been doing it for years. Yeah, and so for me, that was always just my way to express myself. And, music has always moved me. And I never danced professionally necessarily, but just growing up through high school and, elementary school, but on up, I was always active in different talent shows and this and that. And then fast forward to, I went through my schooling for, and hopefully you can't hear that. Let me just do this.
I can't hear anything, which is good.
Okay. So my phone started ringing, and I have it on airplane mode, but of course it rang on Gmail. But you try to take all the precautions, right?
You can't block us.
Can't get away from technology. But yeah. So I started undergrad and grad school. Didn't really dance a lot there, and there was a reason why I didn't. And part of that is I talk about it in my book, From Morning to Night, which is I had lost my sister around that time to homicide. She was killed while I was a senior in high school. And she was in New York at the time, and her and I danced together, and that was like our thing. And so I kind of lost my drive. I went through this state of depression, and it wasn't until I reflected on it after the fact that I realized, oh wait, I was depressed at that time,
right.
But then I found a group called Culture Shock in DC, where I was living, and they were a hip hop dance company. And I started dancing with them from the time that I completed my internship until the time I moved to North Carolina 4 years ago. And it was just a blessing to be able to dance and move and use my body in different ways to really express myself, not just through like talk therapy and all that good stuff, but really just to like, to me, it's just the ultimate in self-expression. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So let me understand, when people come to your practice, are they like getting grooving, or what's happening? I mean, trying to visualize what's going on.
No. So
like, I am angry.
Sometimes I have to do a shoulder shimmy. So
it's interesting philosophy, but I want to hear your take on what's happening.
Well, let me say this. So it took me a while to actually incorporate dance and psychology. And you're still working on that. So for a long time, I kept the two very separate. It was either I was dancing, on the weekends and the evenings with my dance troupe, or I was working and doing my psychology thing during the day. But I always kept them separate until I met a clinician. Her name is Dr. Jamie Marich. And I was going to a CEU training, a continuing ed training, and she was teaching about one technique, EMDR, but it's basically like eye movement. But anyway, during one of the breaks, she had on display some of her books, and one of the books was Dancing Mindfulness. So I was intrigued. I said, what is this about? And she said, well, I do this work. In addition to, as a therapist, I do this work with other people who are going through their own traumas and addictions, and it's really helpful for their healing process. And so at that point, it was like, wait, I can do both of those things together. And it almost gave me like this permission to combine the two.
That's good.
Yeah. So I have occasionally offered some dancing mindfulness work with people. And I actually just was speaking with somebody yesterday. She has a tremendous reach. I'm really excited about what's kind of in the pipeline with this, but really working with trauma and movement, right? Because we keep our emotions and our traumas and everything in our bodies. And so being able to put all that into play is really exciting.
That's really good. So all along growing up, you knew you loved dancing, but then psychology came into play more in college.
Yeah. So, and that was, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
A lot of college students don't, so that's normal.
Right. Exactly. And it was my senior year when I realized I actually had to even go to grad school. I had never even heard of grad school. I didn't know about grad school. Nobody in my family had gone through and completed college. So, well, my mom is a nurse, and so she completed that. But so not having a model, I was just kind of going through, and somebody said my senior year, "What grad school are you going to for psychology?" And I was like, "Come again." So immediately I started filling out the applications and ended up going to a GW for my program. But it was just one of those things that I knew how helpful during my undergrad years that therapy was for me in processing my sister's murder and the loss of her. I went through individual and group therapy while I was at Howard University. And it was just so helpful for me. And I knew that like if I could help other people process and work through their own pain, hurt, grief, trauma, that was one part of it. The second part was if I could prevent other people from going down the path that of the people who took my sister's life. Really was one person. The other man who was there was he just happened to be there, wrong place, wrong time. But if I could prevent somebody from going down that path, that was the plan of mine as well.
Okay. Well, I'm really grateful that you chose that path. And obviously, with your sister passing away, you never want someone that you love so dearly to have to pass away for it to become an epiphany in your life type of thing.
And absolutely. And I will say, though, I think our purpose, a lot of our purpose is in our pain.
Yes.
You know, and it's just being able to get to that place of doing the work to figure that out.
Yes.
And it takes work.
Yes. Big time. It's, you know what, it leaves me kind of sometimes speechless because I know obviously it's some kind of echo happening. Can you hear it?
Yep. I can't hear the echo.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I know firsthand, obviously, that when you have a loved one that transitions home, it's so many different pieces of the puzzle that are left here on this earth for you to put together. And so I know in your book, you have from morning to night. And that's one of the books that you've written. Tell us about that book and what are some of the key takeaways from the book so that I can share it with our audience.
Sure. So that was actually, I started to write that just as journaling. I started to write it shortly after my dad passed away from Alzheimer's related complications. And
because I don't want people to miss hearing what you're saying. And right now we're having some technical difficulties. That's not where people can really understand what's happening. So take your headphones out for a second, if you don't mind. And let's see how that works.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Is that better? Mom, is that any better? Because my mom is typing. She's like, no, only moms. They're like, don't play with my daughter's show now. So
thank you, Mom.
Let's see, Mom, is that any better? It'll take her a minute. My mom in her 60s, she's like, girl, don't be putting me on the spot trying to type. She said yes. She didn't even type it. She's like, that's better. So you can take your headphones out.
Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Cassandra, thank you, Cassandra. Cassandra is always like front and center, but she wasn't feeling well. So I had my mom do some stuff. Thank you, Cassandra, for always being there. You're always there. And Mom, thank you for stepping in. Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, so now tell us what you were saying.
Yeah, so, you know, it's writing that book started out as primarily just a journal. I was journaling. My dad had passed away from Alzheimer's related complications. And he always used to tell me, he said, son, you need to start writing. you need to start documenting all your experiences, whether it's, what you've seen and worked with for people in therapy, or just for yourself. And I would hear it, but I wouldn't hear it. I'd be like, sure, Dad. And it was right then, like it was probably that week of after he passed. I wanted to document actually my experience with him by his bedside the night before he passed. So I needed to remember that because I had flown home that day. My mom called me, and she's a nurse, and she was like, you need to come home. Your dad is probably not going to make it through the night. And so I was flying from DC to Boston and got a flight immediately, fortunately, and had a chance to sit by my dad's bedside. And he opened his eyes, and he hadn't opened his eyes for days. And I told my mom, and she was like, oh my goodness, like he was waiting for you. So, I needed to just process and write that down. And that morphed. It just morphed into the different losses that I had experienced, including the loss of my sister, moving around, growing up in a military family, and some other losses. So for me, it was, how can I just let people know, as a psychologist, as a therapist, like I too have gone through stuff and continue to go through stuff.
We all do.
Human, right? And because a lot of times people might come into therapy and I don't say, I might not share a lot, right? Like it's not necessarily my job to share and say, oh, you've been through that? Me too. Why don't you listen?
It's like, I'm here for help. Right.
Like, why are you telling me your stuff? And so I wanted to be able to share with people in a way that wasn't invasive, and but also could be very helpful. So I also included some ways of that people can take action steps towards their own healing process.
So what is, like, from your own personal experiences, and then obviously counseling so many people that have been coming to your practice, what's some of the takeaways that you say are the top things you encourage people to walk away with?
First and foremost, just talking to somebody. We tend to take everything on, especially I'll speak specifically for men, but we tend to internalize things, and that's kind of what I saw with my dad. And the major difference between what happened with my mom versus my dad after my sister passed, my dad internalized it all, right? And he was always a pretty quiet man, a reserved man, but he really just internalized it, where my mom sought community and she sought therapy, and she did those things, and she really reached out. And so the importance of just talking to people is so pertinent. Doing something creative, so for me, it was writing, it was journaling, it was, sometimes I'll write poetry, it was dancing, but just engaging that creative side of the brain that we tend to ignore a lot in this society and in this culture.
Right.
Yes. So really just engaging that creative part, and then practicing just being present. And that takes a lot of work. It's something as simple as just being grateful and practicing gratitude for what's in your environment here and now. It's, so just practicing that mindfulness, or even meditation, and really getting into a spiritual practice. For me, it allowed that time, allowed me to really start to get into my own personal spiritual journey. So that was really helpful as well.
Wow. Those are really good tips. And it seems interesting, because when you're saying it, it flows so effortlessly. But then when people are on the receiving end, especially with the social climate the way that it is today, how do you recommend that people get the help that they need? Because there's so much anger and division and frustration, and even people that they're not just angry, they want change. And it's like, we're attempting to be peaceful, meaning, we're out here, we're protesting in a peaceful manner because we want change. But then this is messing with their mental state of mind, especially with this being African American men's mental health awareness month. I really want to make sure that we deep dive into that topic and get your perspective.
Yes. Oh gosh. And it has been an interesting, I mean, interesting is a really light word for,
Really? Yeah, I know.
it's just been really overwhelming for a lot of people and myself included. And a lot of my clients that's just been the topic of conversation for so many people, whereas it may not have been front and center, and it is now.
Mhm.
And I think for so many people, it's just important to process whatever it is that is coming up there, right? It's righteous anger, right? Like it's rightful anger. We haven't had an opportunity. It's almost like when you lose a family member, like if you were to lose a family member and then a month later you lose another family member, and then 2 months later you lose another family member. And, let's say one of those family members was murdered, like similar to my sister, and there was never justice for her, for that. Anger is going to build up. Emotions are going to build up, and they have to come out. Emotions are just energy in motion. And when we don't have an opportunity to do something with that emotion, it has got to come out somehow, some way. So a lot of times it either gets internalized, and that can lead to dis-ease for people. And I mean, an energetic kind of dis-ease, but also it could manifest in disease. But also, it might come out externally. So you'll see it in protesting. People ask, why are people, tearing things down and looting and burning things? Well, my thing is, when you have so much anger, again, you usually take that out on the things or the people closest to you. So my guess is that there are people out there who are listening who have been angry and have taken it out on family members, and their family members weren't the necessary cause of that anger in that moment, but they were closest to them, right? So that's where it's going to manifest. And so if somebody's in their neighborhood, it's going to come out towards the things that are closest to them. That's all they have access to. And so it is so important then to, how can we take that anger? Anger is a very helpful emotion. Like, I think so many people are scared of it, and sadness. They're very helpful emotions. It's just, what do we do with them? Aggression is the manifestation of anger, or can be, but it also, another manifestation of anger can be social change.
Well, let me ask this question, because I mean, you're saying a whole lot, and
I know. I'm sorry.
This is good. This is really good. So I'm trying to type it. I'm trying to dissect it and process it, and then go on with another question that can get it even further. Because this is what we're dealing with right now in society, and there's so much discussion taking place surrounding black on black crime, and people are like, don't say it's black on black crime. It's really because of the fact that the police brutality is happening, and if the police brutality wasn't happening, there would be no black. So it's so many differing thoughts and perspectives. But then I just hear you say, when people are angry, they typically take it out on those that are close to them, family, neighbors, friends. Can we talk a little bit more about that philosophy, because that's not a philosophy that's been shared yet on my show?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's human nature. And what I've seen with a lot of it, especially when you talk about trauma, right? We're talking, this is not only primary, secondary trauma that people are witnessing, but we're also talking about intergenerational trauma that's been passed down from generation to generation. And so when we're re-traumatized, or something is triggering to us, there's a natural response, right? Like, that's the body and the brain's way of responding to a trigger, is to do one of three things: you fight, you flee, or you freeze.
Okay.
So
you fight, you flight.
Yep.
Or freeze. Three responses.
Yeah.
To trauma.
Yes.
Okay.
And right now, what we're seeing is a lot of fighting. Right? There are people who are kind of fleeing and retreating into themselves, and kind of, staying in their own space. I mean, COVID related partially, but the other part is it just feels safer to kind of be in a space that doesn't feel as intimidating. But so you're going to see one of those two things primarily. Freeze is more of that, like you're in an immediate danger and your body goes limp, right? And then people afterwards say, oh, I wish I did X, Y, or Z when that was happening. Well, your brain did exactly what it needed to do to keep you even alive. So the shutdown is actually, I mean, you can watch it in nature too. Like when animals are being attacked, or like you'll see them go completely limp until after the trauma, and then they get up and they shake it out, and then they do their thing. And
that's interesting, because then that goes back to why some people that are celebrities and different political figures and people that are really prominent, there was a phase that we were going through where people were saying, why aren't you guys saying anything? Why aren't you speaking up and talking about Black Lives Matter? And it was like this dead silence. And here, maybe that was a moment of freezing. Because I guess based on what I'm hearing you say, possibly is depending upon how they would have reacted when they initially would have chosen to react, it could have been more detrimental.
Yes.
For them to respond. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Only because that puts into perspective that everybody processes things differently. And so what I, from a psychological perspective of me just learning from you, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just learning from you, that how I process something is going to be very different than how my brother, I'll give you an example. My brother, one of my brothers, actually both of my brothers, we process things very differently, extremely differently. So they are Black men, and so they're different. They're like, this is not some flowery situation. This is, this is happening. This is real life. We have to get prepared mentally for this. And how are we going to handle this if different things go south? So it's a lot of, and I'm like, oh my God, this is pretty intense kind of conversation. But I'm a girl. And so I'm thinking very different, and even ladies have situations. So what do you, talk to us some more. Dude, let me be quiet. Let me hear you talk. I'm learning some stuff.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point, because we all process things differently. And so for us to sit back and say, who are they to do, they should be speaking out, or they shouldn't be doing this. Like, I think when we get into the realm of what people should or shouldn't be doing during this time period, it gets into a really slippery slope, because just because you would react one way doesn't mean A, anybody else would react the same way, and B, when you're traumatized and when you're triggered, you're not thinking from a rational point of view. It's easy to sit back and be that Monday morning quarterback, but when you're in the game, you're thinking a little bit differently. And so rational thought isn't necessarily required to keep us alive, right? So it's the whole concept of, when I'm, let's say a tiger was running after you, Kim, and you're just trying to get away. You're just trying to get away to safety. And while you're trying to get away, I come up and run up beside you and say, hey, Kim, can you do me a favor and tell me what the square root of 64 is? And then also what are we having for dinner tonight? Right. You're going to give me that look like,
you're like, what? Boy, bye. I got to get out of here. I'm trying to live.
Right. Now, after you get to safety, you're going to be like, oh, by the way, the square root of 64, and you're going to be able to say, and we're going to have this for dinner. But when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, which I think a lot of Black people, especially during this time, have been really triggered, the tendency might be for just being in one of those three spaces. So
that's really, really good. That's a good perspective. And with Mental Health Awareness Month being this month for African American men, and it's so prominent. Actually, when I was doing research, I realized that it's kind of hard to find just the statistics on Black men. It was more general, and a lot of the sites were saying, hey, we want anti-racism, so we just want it to be more general information about adults as a whole. But I'm like, no, it's very different for Black men and their mental state when they're scared that they may have to encounter just a regular routine stop and end up dead.
Yeah.
That's not normal mental. That's not a normal mental state to have to walk around embracing. And I mean, I can speak only from my children's perspective. They're nervous. They're nervous, and they're not. And I know life is in the power of our tongue, and we can either speak life and death into our lives. But I know that our feelings are also real to us, and our perspectives are real to us.
Yes.
So some of my children all have different perspectives. Some feel like, no, if you're getting pulled over, anything can pop off, regardless of what piece of card I have for them to see. Like I have an actual citizen's card that says, hey, these are the things you're supposed to be able to pull out and say when you are being pulled over. Mm-hmm. Make sure you let them know that citizens accountable, rights and education. If you are stopped, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stay in your car, all of this stuff. But the thing is, if you go to reach for the card, if you go to reach for this card, I don't know that I can tell my children to go reach for this card if they get pulled over, even though it's a powerful tool.
Yeah, the Charlotte Mecklenburg. Yeah, I've gotten those before. Yeah.
But I can't, I don't, I've given each of my children these cards, but I don't know that I can advise them go reach to go grab the card.
Nope.
Do not grab that card.
Better not.
Put your hands up and don't grab the card.
Mm-hmm.
So what the statistics that I was able to find, and you may be able to share a lot more from a mental health perspective, but it was saying, this is on Johns Hopkins, that an estimated 26% of Americans ages 18 and older, which is about 1 in 4 adults, suffer from a diagnosis of mental disorder in a given year. And in this, even another site with Mental Health America was saying that 18.57% of adults experience mental health illness that's equivalent to 45 million Americans. What are your thoughts pertaining to this whole mental health awareness month, and how can we get a better handle on mental health issues?
Yeah. Well, what I will say is I am encouraged and hopeful, and I appreciate the direction that we're moving in when it comes to mental health. I've been doing this work for 18, 19 years now, and it's just become more and more normalized. And especially when you look at men in mental health. There was a documentary that came out several years ago. It's called The Mask You Live In. And it's basically about how boys are raised in this society, in this culture, to push everything down, to don't speak about it, to man up, to, even this culture is a pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So like people feel like they have to take everything on to themselves. And it's almost looked at as a sign of weakness. Right. I think we're starting to shift that dialogue when it comes to men in mental health now. And people are realizing the importance of it. Like when you have rappers coming out and talking about going to therapy, when you have athletes coming out and talking about going to therapy, that is very powerful, right? That shows, your everyday lay citizen, every other boys and adolescents out there who see these people that they look up to talk about going to their therapist. It's like, oh, wait, so I can go too. Like, that's a normal, right. Like, and it's almost looked at, the sense that I get now is like, it's almost looked at as weird if you don't go, for the younger generation.
Right.
Like, you better get yourself a therapist.
Right. It's like very normal.
It is. And I love that. I love that. And again, for men, I think it's the more that those people that we typically look up to as being strong and having it all together, once they continuously talk about having somebody to support them. I remember reading an article about Michael B. Jordan after he played Killmonger, in Black Panther, he actually went to therapy because he actually isolated himself and really got in this angry space. And so he had to go to therapy afterwards to process what that was like, just playing this character. But you figure you have so many people who are not just playing a character for a couple years, they're living it every day and still not going to therapy. So, you know, again, once we start to see and hear more and more of those examples of role models going to therapy, it helps to normalize. And I love some of the Instagram accounts that I follow too. It's a lot of Black men, Black therapists who, again, kind of normalize that process. So I know for me, I get a lot of calls from you know, Black people who want either themselves or their children to come see me because they want to see somebody who looks like them and who could relate to their story and their experience a little bit more than a white therapist, which makes sense.
Well, and people do like to connect with people and that's just normal, whether it's white or Black, Asian, it doesn't matter, Latino, whatever your nationality is, people are usually drawn to people that are similar to them. So that's not abnormal in any way. So whenever we go outside of our race, it is an extra effort typically because that's not the norm for you per se. But I think that everyone should go to the extremes to push past those barriers and go to the extreme to invite other people and nationalities into your world so that you get a chance to have varying experiences. And that's very important, at least for me. I think that's extremely important because, like, I consider I have a sisterhood with people outside of my nationality, outside of my race. Many sisters that I feel like they are like sisters to me, and that's they're not my nationality, but I love them just like I believe I would a sister that was born out of my mom's body, in my opinion. So I think that if we can get past some of those racial barriers, life can change too. So we're going to do a flash round. Now, listen, studio audience. Every time I say we're going to do a flash round, y'all start typing the questions real fast right now. I told y'all, I said we're doing a flash round. Get prepared to go to the mic, type your questions, and the guest will get a chance. I mean, he's going to answer them, or if it's just a comment, he'll, you know, say thank you or whatever. And that's what we're getting ready to do. But it's after the flash round that so many people type. I'm like,
you're like, well, you missed it.
Why would you do that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys like 1 minute or two to type your questions as I share a few housekeeping announcements. Make sure you subscribe to the Kim Jacobs Show. If you haven't subscribed, take a moment today after the end of this broadcast. We end at noon. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Kim Jacobs Show and turn on your notifications. That alerts you that the Kim Jacobs Show is live. We will go live every day at 11 o'clock a.m. Whether my guest is on, not on, or technical difficulties or not, I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that we go live at 11 o'clock a.m. so that you can have that in your schedule. If you ever want to be a part of supporting the Kim Jacobs Show, and all support is greatly appreciated, so you definitely can Cash App Kim Jacobs Inc. or PayPal.me/Kim Jacobs Inc. And different people support, and I appreciate your support because the only way, all of the funds go right into the show and helping, whether it's in some regard of taking care of someone in the back office or in bettering the program. So just know that your support is greatly appreciated. And for those that may be interested in joining in on our corporate prayer line, we've been praying every day for COVID. That COVID is not over. Coronavirus is not over. So make sure everybody know that.
Right.
So it's still at record numbers in a lot of different states. And so people are going back and saying, you know what, forget phase 2, 3, whatever. We're going to backpedal and go back and put some mandatory masks on and different things of that nature. So if you'd like to join in on our prayer line Monday through Friday, and you're welcome to be a part of that, Pastor Jacobs prays 978-990-5000, and the access code is 322083#, Monday through Friday from 12 to 12:30. Okay, so those are some of the housekeeping announcements that I'd like to make sure you know about. If you ever want to sponsor an episode of the Kim Jacobs Show, you can do so by just emailing me, Kim@thebalancedoctor.tv. The 30-second commercials are very inexpensive, and you can get your quick commercial going on these actual episodes if you like to sponsor an episode. Let's go to the flash round. Let's see here. All right. You ready, Dr. Silas?
Bring it on.
Okay.
I guess so.
Allison Skeete says, dance in mindfulness? Sounds interesting. Do you want to elaborate any more on that?
Yeah, so it's dancing mindfulness.
Oh.
Yeah, and it is interesting. And you know, we do it all the time, right? It's one of those things, it's just kind of putting a phrase or some terminology to something that we've already done. So when you hear a new song, for instance, and it just elicits all these emotions or feelings, and you want to move to it a certain way, that's really what it's about, right? And so, for instance, I just did a racial trauma healing mindful or dancing mindfulness webinar and series with a friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine up in Massachusetts, and we did it through Zoom. But so I made sure that I tailored the playlist so that it can elicit different emotions. So we did Fight the Power, you know, we did right.
Yeah,
so
I'm gonna have to participate in one of your sessions because I'm like, I can feel it. I'm like,
yeah, and you got to get it out, like, and it's about being intentional though. That's the only difference with mindfulness, is just an intentionality about what emotions, what comes up for you. So if while you're moving you feel like crying or hitting something, like we embody that in our bodies, and so we got to get that out. And I just, it's powerful work to see people go through that process.
That's interesting. I'm definitely going to ask you, how can people participate in these programs that you're discussing? So make sure you have that information for me to share as well. Also, Chantelle Patterson said, hello.
Hello, Chantelle.
And we went through some of the different points. So that's what's typed here. Point 1, 2, and 3 with, you know, doing something creative, making sure that you talk to someone, don't just internalize it alone. And then the practice just being present and being grateful. Those were some of the tips that Dr. Silas shared. Let's see, anybody else have any questions or comments? My mom, she's still giving. My mom, she's not using code. She's like lagging and freezing occasionally. My mom not.
Oh no.
So my mom is funny. She's trying to help me, but I'm like, Cassandra, help me. And then also one of our church mothers who is 80 years old, she comes on every day and she watches on YouTube. And then she texts me or comments. So if you see me looking at my phone, she'll text me and comment, this is really a great show, baby. She doesn't type comment on it because she doesn't know how to do that well. Her name is Mother Julia Harper. So send a shout out to her.
Mother Julia Harper.
Yes. And then Mother Gladine Garland, my mother-in-law, she comes on as well and watches. And she said, I'm not typing a thing. It kicks me off the whole program.
You ain't gonna get her kicked off today.
Keisha Williams says, hello, I love this.
Yes. Hey, Keisha, that's my girl.
Keisha, make sure you share with some other friends that you know Dr. Silas would love to have on today's program. Make sure that they know to tune in and to even watch the replay if they haven't had a chance to join in yet. And please, you guys, subscribe to the Kim Jacobs Show. Dr. Silas, okay, so now you have a podcast yourself. Tell us about that.
Sure. So, okay, I have, I know I listed 2 in my bio. So the first one is From Mourning to Action, and it's based on my 2 books. So From Mourning to Night, and then What's Your Action Plan? And it really, it was, because I haven't actively put energy into that podcast recently because I have something else I'll talk about in a moment. But it was an opportunity to talk to different people about the different losses they've experienced in their lives and how they continue to use that acronym of action that I talk about in my book, to continuously work through their losses. Because I think what I wanted to do is give people A, hope in coping with their losses, but B, to know that like it's a constant process. It's not one of those things like you go to therapy and you talk about it and then it's over and you don't cry and you don't get sad. Like that's
right.
not that's not even realistic, right? Like that's, yeah, here we are. My sister died 20, gosh, coming up on 28 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I still cry about her, you know, like I still miss her. There are times when I'm triggered or listening to people and it triggers something for me. And that's okay, you know? So I think it's just a matter of like normalizing whatever the grief and loss process is for people. So I haven't done that for about a year or so, but there are many episodes there that can help people with that.
That's really good. And where do they find that? That's on iHeart?
That's on iTunes. Or is it iTunes? Yeah.
Is it iHeart Radio too?
That one, no, it's through, you can get it through iTunes or Spreaker, Spreaker.
And actually, just so everyone knows, you'll be able to hear this same interview again on Spreaker and iTunes and iHeart Radio, because I actually have a platform for people to be able to download it that's just listening to the program. So there's a podcast version of the Kim Jacobs Show as well, and you'll hear the interview that I'm doing today with Dr. Damon Silas. But you can hear his podcast From Mourning to Action, and that's on iTunes or Spreaker as well. And if you just search Dr. Damon Silas, you'll find his programming that can help you with everything that he's sharing today.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, and then the second one is called a mental health mixtape, fresh rhyme, sound bites, and movie clips. So that's myself. I am one of two co-hosts. My other co-host, Dr. Adrienne Lecca, Dr. AD Fresh, as she goes by on the show. That's my girl. That's my partner. Her and I went to grad school together, and we've been friends for over 20 years. So,
and what is that one called? I want to type it again because I know I read it in your bio, but I want to type it.
Sure, it's called a mental health mixtape.
Health mixtape, yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, and that can be found on iTunes
and Spreaker as well.
Spreaker. Yeah. And I think that one is on iHeart Radio too.
And that's a radio show that comes out every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. So I'm typing all of that up so that people know exactly how to be able to stay in contact with you and follow some of the programming that you share, because you're fun, you're lighthearted, but then you also understand the mind and how it works and the importance of being able to have a better handle on our mindset, which I love that. So here's some information that I'm sharing with you guys regarding Dr. Silas, so how you can stay in touch with him. And his website is DamonSilasPsychology.com. DamonSilasPsychology.com. The reason I say it, even though people can see it, is because of the podcast. So people that are listening, that's why people probably be like, why should she keep doing that? We see it. It's because of iHeart Radio and iTunes and Spreaker. People don't see what I'm putting on the screen.
That's right.
Okay, some more comments that came in, and I want to get those answered. Cassandra asked, what other types of active therapy resources can you tell us about? Something for couples.
Yeah, so what I would suggest for people, if you're just doing a search, Psychology Today is always a great place to start. And that's something you just go to psychologytoday.com, and you can find people in your specific area. So you get to, you can put in your zip code and find therapists who are close to you. And then you could also specialize and say, okay, I want somebody who works specifically with men or with couples or with my type of insurance that I have. So that's a really great way to tailor your search.
Okay.
For couples, the Gottman Institute. Couples work is not one of my specialty areas, but I do know that the Gottman Institute, which is GOTTMANN, they do a lot of just research with couples and a lot of work with couples.
Works with couples. Okay. Okay, that's good. So make sure you all say that Dr. Damon Silas referred you if you're a couple and you go to the Gottman institute, because that's really good that he's taken a moment to give a shout out to another facility, even though he doesn't specialize with dealing with couples in that regard. My mom said, I am going to follow the mothers of the church. This typing is just too much for me. This is not.
It's not an LOL.
She said, this is real. It's for real. What Cassandra's doing, this is real. So I don't think my mom gonna be typing much on here. That's funny. Okay, so what are some of your plans coming down the pipe? What are some things happening in your future that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I've been doing a lot of work with, again, racism, you know, just focusing on that. So I've talked to several people about different, continuing with workshops and seminars surrounding healing, racial healing and trauma, or racial trauma and healing, I should say. So that's in the pipeline. So looking out for more dancing mindfulness. And then as well, I do coaching work. And so I also, with Collaborative Solutions Group, shout out to Titus Bartolotta. What up, Titus? He and I do group coaching first and third Tuesdays of the month. So that's always on the docket. And so we'll be doing that. And there's also a Leadership Mastery Summit that we'll be hosting in August. It'll be virtual. I don't know if anything is going to be in person nowadays.
No time soon, not for me.
Right. Especially, yeah. But yeah, so we got that Leadership Mastery Summit coming up as well. So yeah, those are just some of the things that I've been working on.
Well, one thing that you're saying with the racial trauma and healing workshops, what do you think it takes for racial healing to occur? For what's happening from your perspective as a psychologist, what do you recommend to be able to help people start mending and healing and having more unity?
Yeah. First and foremost, just being in safe spaces, like being in safe spaces with each group. And I want people to understand, you know, when you start to see, you know, Black people congregating with Black people during this time, or Latinos congregating with Latino, like you were saying earlier, that's a very natural response to threats in our environment, right? And so it's a very natural, normal thing to then say, okay, can we? It's almost like playing a game of tag or hide and seek, and you always have to go back to base, right? Like, and it's almost like one of the you would run free, but then you always have to.
Laser tag, you got to go but then you got to go back and refuel at the base.
And then you got to go back to base. We got to go back to base. We got to go back to base and just reset, renew, refresh, and really feel safe. So giving each other the safe space, but then, you know, I think doing some work together, just as you were talking about earlier, Kim, where how can we start to then create spaces where we all come together and start to see more of our similarities than not. We all have so many similarities that we tend to, we're in a very divisive time. But when we get to the root of everything, we're all feeling very similar things. Now, I will reference, there's a book called My Grandmother's Hands, and it's by Resmaa Menakem or Menakem. I hope I'm saying his last name correct, and I'm probably not. But it's a book about racialized trauma and how to heal. And it's just a phenomenal book about the body work, the somatic, the stuff that we need to do physically to get to a space of healing, right? So when you think about it, when we're triggered, we always feel it in our bodies, right?
Yes.
With the work that I do with people, I'll ask them, where in your body do you feel, pick an emotion, you know, where in your body do you feel your anxiety or your depression or your trauma?
Well, like I felt it in my heart. I mean, I felt like my heart was broken. And I was like, I did research on it and everything. And I actually started talking to my family and close friends to say, I feel like my heart is broken when my son passed away. And I said, if I die during this period of time, it's because I died from a broken heart. I died from a broken heart, and I knew that would have been the reason for my death. You know, so I actually started sharing that with family and friends. So where you feel that pain in your body, it does matter.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that too. You know, and that is very common for people who have experienced loss, that they literally feel it in their heart. Right. And so, you know, part of the work is just being with that, breathing into it, but also I do talk a lot about a technique called emotional freedom techniques. And oh, by the way, this is I almost forgot to share this resource. But there is an app called the Tapping Solution.
Okay.
And I have the Ortners, Nick and Jessica Ortner. They have helped to popularize this
an app called what?
The Tapping Solution.
Okay.
And Nick and Jessica Ortner were so gracious in asking me to do a meditation, a tapping meditation specifically for racial anxiety and racial trauma.
What does that look like? How does?
Yeah, so what tapping is you tap on different pressure points to send a signal of calm to your body, to that part that says you either need to fight, flee, or freeze. When you tap on these different pressure points, you actually calm that part of the body. And you
I'm so glad you said that, because I had that discussion with my son in the car yesterday. He was telling me about some stressors and things personal that he was dealing with. And I told him something that helps me significantly. I said, I find a pressure point and I just like push on it a little. And for some reason, I didn't know it was psychologically sound, but it takes that stress completely away in that moment of anxiety.
Yes, that is so phenomenal. I love that you said that. And it's interesting because we intuitively know that these things help, but this just gives us an actual formula. And what it does, and it's been shown that it lowers the stress hormones in your body, literally. Like, they've done study after study that shows that it lowers the stress hormones running through your body. So that the more that you tap on these different pressure points, the better it is for your entire, and you can change your genes. This is how we start to change racial trauma in our genetic codes. So with our genes, there's something called epigenetics, and you can EPI genetics. And the racial trauma, for instance, gets passed down from generation to generation in our genes. And this allows us to start to change that genetic code that we pass down. So it's just phenomenal work. It's so super powerful. And you could always benefit from a therapist and a coach or a coach, but you don't need somebody for you to do that work for yourself as well.
Wow, this is great. Paula Lesso, Paula Lesso is my guest on Monday.
What small world.
Yes. So she's going to be my guest. She said you were great on Coffee and Conversations about Race and Injustice. That was the first time I heard you.
Oh, thank you, Paula. And nice to see you again.
And you can see her on Monday right here on the Kim Jacobs Show at 8:00 a.m.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Paula, in advance for Monday. And thank you, Dr. Damon Silas, for being my guest today here on the Kim Jacobs Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
I had a ball having you on. I learned you want to do a little dance move.
A little shoulder shimmy? Oh.
I mean, you got to be happier by the time you finish implementing some of these, like, ho, ho, ho. So.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm so glad that you were on today. Listen, everybody, make sure you tune in all next week on the Kim Jacobs Show. I have Paula Lesso on Monday. My Bishop Stenneth E. Powell, will be on Tuesday, talking about what you should do before you say I do. So you want to tune in on the 30th. My own personal bishop of the North Carolina 2nd Jurisdiction of the Church of God in Christ, will be here on the Kim Jacobs Show. Okay, everybody, God bless you, and thank you for watching. Have a great day. See you Monday.